Good evening, St. Lucians, once again, whether in St. Lucia or in the diaspora. It's always nice to be back with you on Head to Head. This is the program that wants to educate and not just be flippant in what we say, but to educate, to bring out issues that are pertinent to all of us, because we live in this little pristine land of ours, and we want to know, we want to educate each other. And if we can do so, I hope that we on this program will be one of the leaders. Welcome to Head to Head once again. The discussion program, we hope, it's a discussion program. We hope that you will enjoy, you will listen to. And it is my privilege, as always, tonight to have, I would say, a special guest for many reasons, but I wouldn't discuss it with you. To have in the studio with me Mr. Everistus Jean-Marie. Mr. Jean-Marie at one time was the petroleum, the president it is of the Petroleum Dealers Association. He was also a senator in 2006 to 2011. So in other words, he serves his country well. And I am sure that from the idea that I'm speaking to him, that you must have already got in your mind that we are going to talk about petrol. In England we say petrol, here you say gas. Because there are rumors that there might be a third player for gas in this country. And we are now asking the question, isn't that going to be good for St. Lucians? That where you have competition, because Mr. Jean-Marie himself is an economist, and I'm sure that he would tell us, if he was really, as an economist, yes, competition is good, but in this case, is it really good? And that's what we hope that he will tell us. Good evening, Mr. Jean-Marie.
Good evening, Dennis, and thank you for inviting me to your show. I need to correct you. You give me titles that doesn't really belong to me. I wouldn't call myself an economist. My background is accounting and project management. So
well, I give it to you, economist, because
but I do appreciate
you are
things
close to it.
I do appreciate things of an economic nature, because it's a subject which
exactly.
interests me. But I wouldn't call myself any.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and I hope we can have a very informed discussion on the issue regarding the possibility, well, what I would now say the probability that there'll be a new player in the market, because from all the evidence, there's good reason to believe that there is likely to have a new player in the market.
But do you think that we are prepared for this right now, especially in St. Lucia? Because looking at, say, for example, Trinidad, how many players are in the market in Trinidad? And they're much bigger than us.
Yeah. On the face of it, and we have to be so very careful when we import in models to environments that they do not lend themselves to. Generally, when you speak of competition, you expect it to be in the benefit of the consumer, because the more players you have a more or less homogeneous product. Then if you want to have your bigger share of the market, then you're likely to reduce your prices to get the bigger share, and prices do come down in the interest of the consumer. On the face of it, it is true. The difference is, in our situation, that model doesn't quite fit, because the realities are different. Gasoline or fuel being a control item, the margins on the price of fuel is set by a regulator, which is the government. And the fact that you have more players doesn't mean that the price is going to change, because players are going to, if their margins are not determined by themselves, by an outside force, they will do their best to at least hold up their margins. Nobody's going to give their margins away easily. So what you have is, if you have an extra player, what you have really effectively done is to reduce the volume of fuel that can be sold individually by the existing and new operators, because what you have essentially done is you have split up the pie into smaller bits, because there are more people to have a bite at it. The thing you have to also understand as well is that the dealers have a common interest in protecting their margins, and they have an association. And the history is, if your margins are under threat or your business viability is under threat, very often dealers come together and exist whatever power they have collectively to put pressure on governments to get their margins up. And that's how we've been able to do it. As a matter of fact, St. Lucia is quite a good example of where dealers come together, are able to secure a better deal for themselves, as opposed to other islands like Dominica, Grenada, where there's no association. So it's very difficult to leverage any kind of group effort when you are operating quite independent, very independent of each other. So the reality here is that it's not in the best interest in the long term of the consumer, and I think I've explained that before, because what's going to happen there is you bring in that extra player, it's going to reduce the volume of fuel the existing player is going to attract. It means that the profits will go down. Operators who are at probably at the break-even point or near that point are going to come under. And a lot of them are in that situation if they are outside of the cash-free zone. So it's only a matter of time they'll come together and will place pressure on the government for an increase in margin. And an increase in margin means that the price of gas has to go up.
But here's the thing that for me is a little bit, it complicates things in my mind, is that if the dealers' margins, you know, people who sell the petrol, are going to go down, surely the government or whoever is in charge must say, well, what we are taking in, let us cut down on that. Would government think that way?
Oh no, government wouldn't. It's unlikely. Government is under pressure to raise, always under pressure to raise revenue, and it's one of those revenue items which is you get 100% compliant. There's no leakage there. By this I mean when you charge that tax, you're going to collect it.
Yes.
Because the government collects it from two people, the two operators here. So as long as they have dispatched the fuel, there's a tax attached to that volume, you pay up. So it's one of those secure areas of revenue that government is assured of 100% compliance. And that's why it's so attractive in terms of as an item to tax. So it's very unlikely that government is going to give up revenue in terms of taxes. On the contrary, they tend to increase their taxes. Now, if prices are going up, then it's almost, you know, it becomes difficult for government to place additional taxes on fuel because of its negative impact on the economy. Because as energy cost goes up, it has a detrimental effect on the growth of the economy. So you are in some ways restrained. The higher the price is, the less inclination a government would have to tax the fuel. As you have seen in the past, when prices are high and people are complaining, governments are looking for ways to try and appease the public because of the negative impact. And on occasions have had to reduce taxes.
But the two providers of fuel, I say fuel, we say gas here, of gas, how do they see that? Because I know they are just concerned about supplying, you know, but wouldn't they really come to the conclusion that if there are too many players out there, it will become a little bit troublesome for us?
You see, it's not so much the, and I have to explain that, because I know on the face of it, it almost sounds counterintuitive to say that more players, more suppliers are going to not in the interest of the consumer. If it was a situation where the price of fuel is like to be determined by market forces, then it's fair game.
Correct.
Government is out, so the market will decide the price. But the market is not deciding the price. The government is deciding the price. And so it's a bit unfair for government to say, look, you can only do this, make so much per gallon, and then take action to reduce your ability to sell as much fuel as you were selling before by allowing more people to come in. That's the unfairness about it. You cannot have it both ways. If you say you want competition, well, what you should really do is get out of the market and let market forces decide on the price of fuel. But there's a danger in that. The moment you do that, the very nature of fuel, there is no practical substitute for fuel. while in the initial stages you may see a coming down of prices, in the long run, prices will go up because people who own vehicles have no choice, and suppliers will not be kind, if I may put it this way, to users. They would take a maximum advantage of the situation. And that is why this product is a control item. That's why government is in the market, to ensure that these things don't happen. Because unlike other countries, like say UK, US, there are alternative ways to traveling. You could go on the train. There's a good bus system. You know, people fly between cities. In our country, we have little choice. You cannot tell a person get on his bike. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So it's very easy, I know, for people to transform or transfer theories, market theories from one environment and bring it to another. It doesn't really work like that. You need to look at all the assumptions on which these things have been based and see if it applies in our context. The truth is, it doesn't apply in our context, it doesn't fit. If you're coming in here, you say you want competition, the only way government could justify competition and bringing in more players is to get out of the market.
But, you know, like, for example, in the 1970s, thereabouts, we saw the price of fuel on the market drastically going down. Lots of people thought that fuel now...
That's pre-oil crisis.
Yes, the oil crisis I'm talking about. And they thought, great, you know, we'll now get cheap fuel. But what a lot of people did not realize, gas prices, it will go to a level, but it always seems to rise.
Yeah.
And consequently, what I am looking at is how do, say, for example, governments, especially small governments like ours, maintain their revenue on gas? They would have to bring down their prices too, would they not?
No, I mean...
What their intake of
taxes?
Of taxes, yes.
Well, governments would hope they wouldn't have to do that because, like I said, because of the attraction of the item. And it's not something unique to St. Lucia.
Yes.
In all major countries, tax is a significant part of the price of fuel because of the high level of compliance. You cannot escape it. Unlike other products, you cannot escape it. It is very difficult for government has to come under pressure to reduce the tax on fuel.
But don't you think that pressure should come if, say, for example, another player is in and fuel, in the hope that fuel prices will go down? Don't you think then that pressure should?
Well, if prices go down, then the proportion of taxes will look much higher. Yes, people could make a case, well, no, government, you are making too much in percentage term on a gallon of fuel, so you need to come down. That could be, but who's going to put that pressure?
But as we see, more and more people are now having vehicles. As it is, so many vehicles are coming into the country every month. So obviously, the more people who have vehicles, the more pressure that can be put on government. And
as you made that point about the vehicles, it's no question that more vehicles have been coming out. But you know, it'll be strange to hear that the actual level of fuel consumption in the market is dropping. In the year 2019, the consumption level of fuel across the service station network dropped by about 18%.
Good Lord.
This year, I think if there isn't over 2019 over 2018, well, no, 2018 over 2017, right, it dropped. 2019 over 2018, it's probably hardly any movement. So people are not, while people are having cars, they're not running around the place with the cars, I mean, consuming large amounts of fuel.
So the consumption of fuel by vehicle owners are going down.
It's going down.
In that sense of the word.
Yeah, because fuel is costly, so everybody wants to have a vehicle, but can everybody afford to run a vehicle? So that's the issue. A lot of people want to own vehicles, but can they afford? And the truth is, most people cannot afford. Yet they'll buy the vehicle.
But you know,
because the numbers don't add up.
But here's what I'm now seeing, is that the idea of government bringing or the market into their sphere of, you know, revenue gathering they're not really into the market per se.
Well, you see, and
That is the problem.
But you know, you'd have thought something of that nature would require some serious analysis of data.
Correct.
And it's sad that when major government policy decisions have been made in the absence of hard data, people sit in a room and assume that this thing is, you know, well, there are more cars, you must be selling more gas, so bringing in a player, the price of gas
Well,
goes
Mr.
up.
Jean-Marie,
Very simplistic.
let's hold it there. You know, we'll go for our break, and when we come back, we will, you know, really touch on that, because I think this is a very important.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Head to Head. We have in the studio with us today, this evening that is, Mr. Everistus Jean-Marie, who is a petroleum dealer in St. Lucia, and one of the well-known ones, I should say. Maybe he wouldn't like me to be saying this, but he is. You know, we have to stick to the truth and to the facts. And we were talking about market forces as far as government is concerned, and if government wants to be part and parcel of a market, because we hear a lot of the times, and I remember Margaret Thatcher said there are certain things that government, especially business-wise, should not be involved in. Could that be?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. Because of the important nature of fuel as a major source of energy in the country, and there are few players, relatively, you do not want to leave it purely to market forces, because I can assure you, left purely to market forces, the price of fuel will go up. Okay? Because most gas stations, their viability, I would say at least 80% of their viability is tied with selling the fuel and not the convenience store, which is different in other territories, bigger markets, where you have millions of people. And convenience stores do make a difference because of the whole geography and demographics of cities, big cities, traveling on motorways where you can't find a supermarket within close reach. So you have a convenience store and you're able to charge.
One-stop shop.
You're able to charge a premium price. I
Yes.
mean, a convenience store in the city of Castries, I mean, what convenience you talking about? If I'm selling my price down at Lance Road, a little 50 cents more, person will just go down local area and buy it in a shop.
Quite.
A lot less. So convenience stores have their limitations by virtue of the smallness of our market. So I would just say government needs to be, I think, on balance, involved in the market in terms of trying to control prices and deciding on margins. But what it cannot do, it cannot at the same time be taking actions unilaterally to impact negatively on the volumes that individual stations are able to sell by allowing people to come in the market willy-nilly. It's irresponsible, because I'm saying to you, in the long term, it will hurt the consumer. Because, and the point I made before is, yes, initially, okay, somebody might say, okay, drop the price or something like that. You won't be able to sustain that. When you see the volumes, because don't forget, your revenue is a component of two things: the margin you make on the item, the gallon of gas, and how many gallons of gas you sell. So if you're selling less gallons of gas, all things being equal, you'll make less money. And when you see gas stations begin to hurt financially, they'll come together and they have the ability to force government's hands. We've proven it time and time again. So if gas stations say, look, we're going to be putting pressure on government to get an increase in margin, it will happen.
But you know, and I must say that one of your father and things, one of the first as far as petrol, selling petrol and thing is concerned. And you have taken over and things of that sort. But to be honest, I'm hearing you, but I'm thinking to myself, are all petroleum dealers or people, service providers, thinking in that same way? Do they see it in the same light?
Oh, they do. Because there was a meeting quite recently, which I attended, and that was a very concerned group of business people who were very surprised at the likelihood of a third player coming to the market, and the possibilities, in fact, what it looks like they'll have to be setting up gas stations all around the place to get in business. How else can they do it? Because they can't really purchase existing stations, because most of them are owned by the marketing companies, and And if they're not owned, these stations are in long-term contracts with existing companies. They just can't walk out of it. It'll be prohibitive to do that. So how else is a new player going to operate in the market except to build stations? And where are you going to build those stations? You can't build it in the north. There's no space for that. It's going to cause more traffic congestion up there. So you got to go south of Carthage. Now, if you go south of Carthage, that's where the gas stations are most vulnerable because the bulk of the business is in the north, not in the south.
But supposing, I like that thing. The bulk of business is in the north.
Yeah, about 70% of the business is in the north.
Supposing business began to move southwards, and in effect, looking at what government is trying to do, is trying to raise that business sector in the south.
Good question.
Don't you think that
question.
will help tremendously in that respect?
Now, if that's a policy decision you're going to be making, then it has to be, other things has to be done in tandem. You cannot say that you're going to put gas stations there with the hope that businesses are going to move down. What initiatives are being taken to ensure that a significant shift in business activity takes place south of Castries? So all you're going to do in the short term is just hurt those small operators down there. And let me say this about fuel stations. And I'm not saying it because I am in the business. I'm talking from a national standpoint. The way global trade is operating right now, a lot of our traditional businesses will fail to exist. Because you could go before a computer screen and buy a pair of shoes on the net.
Correct, yes, indeed.
And literally anything that can move across a border, you can buy on the net. And get it quite competitively as well. So it means that the ability for those traditional businesses to exist is dwindling. Okay? Is dwindling. The businesses that are left to locals to manage are those where trade, cross-border trade doesn't affect it. So the people offering services here, like a barber, hairdressers, people selling fuel, and the likes. Hotels, the options are getting smaller. And you need to protect certain areas, I think, for your locals to develop their entrepreneurial skills. And not allowed give it away.
You know, to be honest, Everest, what I was thinking, if there's more, say, dealers in the market, more petrol, and the price of petrol does decrease, don't you think maybe that might generate even more people buying fuel to that extent, because fuel is a little bit cheaper, so they will take more trips than they would before?
Yeah, but what like I said to you before is, if you frame this problem narrowly,
yes,
it looks
simple
and acceptable. But I'm telling you, business.
But that's how the little man
will see it. Yes,
that's how they see
it.
Yeah,
because that's, if you're looking at, like I said, if you frame this problem very narrowly and you look at it within a very short term, you will say, bring in a new player, he will reduce the prices, and okay, people will fall out.
But in essence, what we are saying,
down
they
the
don't
road,
see the bigger picture.
That's what I'm telling you. Down the road,
right?
Down the road, those people will just drive out the smaller guys, all right, who own their little stations.
And then prices will just escalate.
What is happening now in the market too, and just to go back to the point I'm making, because listeners may not quite understand, I think probably didn't give the full picture when I said protect certain businesses here. We have another battle on our hands, in that the marketing companies in the country have reduced dealers to just managers.
Really? By
virtue of the nature of the arrangements between the marketing companies and the retailers. In so much that the rents, most of them own the stations now. Okay?
Yes,
they own the stations.
Correct.
Or they have a long lease for the station, not the dealer.
That's right.
And the fee structure is such that you are literally a manager, because the fees are very high. In some shops, you pay 6% on your sales in the convenience store.
Right.
And like I said, in some cases, I know of one case where your rent goes up if you sell more fuel.
Good Lord.
So, you know, it has driven the retailer, it's driving the retailers out of the business. And that's why I'm saying we need to protect this arrangement where, you know, just the big marketing companies own the whole retail distribution
But
system
why
in
have
St.
we
Lucia.
allowed that in the first place? That,
Well, there are
that
some
those
laws.
people, that they can come and just buy these places because you all sell it to them, no, then they, or you lease it to them, then they have it for 99
Well,
years.
money talks.
Really?
Because it's the same thing, yeah. Those people have the financial might to go to a dealer or an owner of a property, because sometimes people own property and don't necessarily run the gas station.
All right, right.
And there are quite a few of them, people who own the gas station and don't necessarily have an interest in running a gas station, but they see it as a very lucrative investment. And the marketing companies just go and they enter, either they try to buy or they end up in long-term leases over 20 years. So they own the stations effectively.
But is this
And then
happening
they have
throughout the Caribbean? Is that
I
happening
get
in Trinidad, for example?
it makes well, Trinidad is a different case because you only have because you have one marketing company, which is a national company, which is is it Trintech? The name escapes me now, but it's one marketing company there which is government owned, and is one brand of fuel, which operates in Trinidad. But like I said to you, these people, the business model of marketing companies is to own the gas stations so that their business is protected from change over to the competition. So everybody's trying to own the premises. And where they don't own the premises, they enter into long lease arrangements. And the dealers now are effectively, while they may not call them that, just managers, because whatever they're going to make out of it, it ain't going to be anything significant.
But looking at the Trinidadian model, do you think then that other governments within the Caribbean may think that is the best model? That
no, it's different because it's different for the simple reason that Trinidad has oil. The government wants to leverage the fact that it produces oil so that to keep prices as low as possible.
But that was before they had the oil.
No,
what did they have before the oil? Did government own the
Yeah, they own the whole
long
oil
before?
infrastructure. Yeah, they own. Trinidad has always have lower prices of fuel, which helps to give a good boost to the economy.
But of
so
course,
the government has
that's
used
what
it
I would
as
have thought.
a good tool to keep the engine of the economy running. And it has given Trinidad a competitive advantage in the manufacturing sector. Because the cost of energy is so much cheaper it is over there than it is here. So even our manufacturing sector can never compete with Trinidad because of the lower energy costs in Trinidad, which the government has effectively allowed to take place by controlling the price, by deciding what the price of fuel is on other energy products in Trinidad.
Should the law then be changed to facilitate something in that similar to that, not government owned, but a body of people that can do so?
It's unlikely because, like I said, government sees fuel is such an important revenue generator for them that they can't use that as a tool, I think, to try and.
But as someone who's traveled around the Caribbean, what are the other models, apart from the Trinidadian one, that is similar to ours?
They're pretty much the same because they are the same marketing companies involved. And like I said, I think strategically, and I've seen that by the movements over the years, that strategically, to protect their interests in the various markets, they move to acquire those properties. So 20 years back, a lot of St. Lucians own their gas station.
But of course. Yeah.
It's no longer the case. They are in a minority. I probably could count on one hand how many people own the gas stations. Most of them are owned or in a long lease arrangement with the marketing companies. So St. Lucian retailers are being marginalized in this business and continue to be marginalized. And that is why bringing another player in just further exacerbates the position. And it's very unfortunate that decisions like these are made in a flippant way. I think if a decision like that is going to be made or considered, the first thing you do is call people in the market to get a feel of the size and the nature of the issue before you. Because until you understand how other people see it, you don't have a full grasp of the problem, and therefore you cannot come up with the right solution. And there's so much of that goes on in this country, that people believe they have the answer to solutions, when in fact they frame the problem so narrowly that they cannot come up with the right solution because they're not prepared to listen to what other people have to say.
Mr. Jean-Marie, I will say to you, we are going for another break, but I want to hold that too, because to be honest with you, I want to ask you a pertinent question in regards to what you have said. In that, why did you probably do these companies own what the assets that you have? I'll come back to that.
Sure.
Welcome back to Head to Head. Once again in the studio tonight is Mr. Everistus Jean-Marie, and wherever you are, I hope that you are enjoying and really feeling that there are many things that have been discussed there that you didn't know about, because we take these things for granted. We go to the gas station, we buy our gas, we know that government probably takes some, they make their profit, but we don't realize that it is more complicated than it is, or as we see it. Well, welcome back, Mr. Jean-Marie. I was thinking, when you talked about that these people now come in and buy these petrol stations or lease it or own it, so to speak, and then you are just the manager. What I mean, the question I want to put to you directly is, if you had foreseen that, why didn't you not say to yourself, no, we can't have these people just come and buy our lands, buy our assets and then control us?
Well, it's not that I saw it. I would say that's going back over 20 years, that it was very clear what the intentions were. But there are means of controlling that, which government has within its powers. There are means of controlling that.
Well, what are they? What are these?
But I saw it coming, and I ensured that as a company we were protected from that. So we own our gas stations. Okay. So we cannot be just thrown out, or rents cannot be dictated to us. We are in control of the situations, and we have secured our position for the long term. So I'm not under that threat. But a lot of other operations have found themselves under that threat.
Well, that's what I was going to come to, because you may,
to answer your question,
you may be probably you are unique. What about those others? Who?
Well, I would say, unique in the sense of, consequentially, yes, it appears so. But we take our business very seriously. I mean, people might say, look, it's a simple operation. You go there and you pump in, you buy gas and you pump gas. I mean, it's a lot more complex than that. It's a lot of resources have to be placed in this. You must have very tight controls over your operation, because a lot of cash is being handled, and people like cash. If you understand what I mean. So
no, I don't.
So you got to avoid the temptations, and
yes.
And you need to understand the business model that works in a gas station. For instance, gas.
But do you think government understands it?
I don't think people do unless you're in the business. People don't understand unless you're in the business. For instance, I mean,
but
when you think the margins on gas, the margin is 8%.
They are taxing. So they must
they're in the business in the point.
Don't they have the expertise? People who have the expertise?
No, to be fair, they wouldn't understand. They wouldn't be involved in the intricacies of the day-to-day run of a gas station. They wouldn't be. They're far removed from that. Their interest is, yes, to collect the taxes on the fuel. That's, I think, to the extent to which they are concerned. But like I mean, these things require a particular skill to manage well. Otherwise, it's a matter of time, because you fall by the wayside. You need very tight cash controls in a gas station business. Your margins are only 8% thereabout. There's very room for error, and some gas stations have made the mistake of doing a fair amount of their business on credit. Credit meaning that giving, supplying fuel on credit to customers.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
And waiting for the cash to come out to pay your fuel. Now, St. Lucia's doesn't have a good reputation, if I may say, of paying their bills on time. So if you have a significant part of your business is on credits to customers and people are not paying on time, you run into cash flow problem because the suppliers want their money when they supply the gas. They're not going to give you credit.
And I see, for example, that you don't take checks.
Well, exactly.
These
These already exactly,
because
and
these
it's not,
checks can bounce. And
they're not. They can. They do. They do bounce, and the
not only that,
administrative work attached to it.
Exactly, and
I mean,
the problem that is involved, then it's cost you more.
It's cost
so
more.
any
Time
profit
and
margin
money.
that you have, it is
Further,
now being
no.
cut more and more and more and more. I understand that.
Yeah.
And you see, because it is important that St. Lucians who see you and others understand why you are taking those sorts of steps.
Yeah.
And they think, well, maybe they're making their money. Why they take such drastic action?
No.
You know, and now when you explain that, you can understand. Because at the end of the day, if you don't protect your profit margin, you are going to go down the drain.
Yeah.
And people must understand that. And do you think that
No, they don't. They don't. They don't.
What is out
Because,
there that they don't?
I mean, you need to pay your staff well,
That's the other thing also.
right? And to pay your staff well, you must have a decent,
Profit
right?
margin, yes.
Because there's a big cost in having high staff turnover at a gas station.
Correct.
And let me give you an example of what I mean by that. You have staff these days. Fuel, diesel is, well, it's about 20% of the sales of fuel. But a lot of vehicles, you look at them and it's difficult to say whether they take gas or diesel. And some diesel vehicles, the technology is such now that some diesel vehicles are so quiet, you won't even know it's a diesel vehicle. In times past, if a vehicle pull up at a pump, you know it's a diesel vehicle because of the noise. Right now, you can't even tell the difference. Now, when you have staff on board who are new, they can easily make the mistake of putting gas in diesel or
Quite.
diesel in gas.
Quite.
Somebody gets gas in a diesel vehicle and goes away, or gas in a diesel car, messes up somebody's engine. That could run into thousands of dollars.
Correct.
Thousands of dollars.
Correct.
Not to mention the stress associated in trying to restore
Yes,
a
yes,
problem.
quite.
Okay?
Quite.
I've had instances where you have to replace a person's engine.
Good Lord.
Now, that could easily happen if you have high staff turnover. So in other words, the people you have
Because you
at
have
your
to have
pumps
trained staff in that sense.
and the people you have your
yeah.
staff are not even familiar with the customers. You see, your chance of familiarity with customers are greater the more stable your staff is, because relationships develop. The guy comes every week in, week out, the same person is there, I know it's gas. You bring in a new person, I'm not familiar, take a chance, boom.
It's
problem.
not only that, customer service is far better.
Yeah. Okay. So you have this problem. So a lot of little challenges that people don't see that's behind the scenes that you have to pay. Security is a big issue.
It's now become
It's a
because of
big
crime. Yes.
issue at,
Yes.
at a gas station. Okay, you cannot let your guard down. And as things get more difficult, it becomes even more of an issue. Easily, costs run about over $10,000 a month in securities. Okay, but going back to the point I was making, that government can control the domination of the marketing companies in the network. According to the law, marketing companies are supposed to be just marketing companies. They're the ones importing the fuel. They are not supposed to be retailers of fuel. Now, I know there's an anomaly taking place right now which needs to be brought up. A petroleum license should be given to a retailer, not a wholesaler. And I think there are some operators now who are operating as wholesalers
and retailers
and that
at the
should
same
be
time.
stopped.
Okay. Okay.
So if it's one way of mitigating against the dominance of the marketing companies by allowing locals to have the license to retail.
But what about if they cut out the wholesalers, like you see in a lot of businesses now, whereas before you had wholesaler, retailer, you know. And what has happened is that we now have the bigger retailers who have now taken over the middle and now it is bigger at the bottom. Wouldn't that
No.
work much better?
The nature of the product doesn't lend itself to that.
It doesn't lend
No,
itself,
because you need to first, I don't think the retailers have the capacity to come together to bring in oil and store it, or fuel, sorry, and store it and distribute it. You need somebody to do that. The marketing companies are best placed to do that because they have the wherewithal and storing fuel is not a case of just taking fuel from and dropping it into a thing. There's a lot of logistics
But
attached
Mr.
to
Jamari,
this.
don't you think too, when I'm listening to this, what I am hearing to an extent is that whichever government, it seems as though they do their own thing and the dealers do their own thing.
Yes.
Shouldn't there be some sort of coming together really at, say, for example, every month, so to speak, have this meeting, discuss things so that each other learn from each other and understand the problems?
I mean, that's how progressive companies, progressive
Exactly.
countries deal with challenges that they face as a company, as a country. But we have a certain type of myopic thinking in the country that some people believe by virtue of the position they hold, they become all-knowing. When the fact is, that's when they need more people around them to guide them into making decisions.
Correct.
And yes, I think,
And I think
when you make
I
a
hate to
decision,
what you're saying here. I hate to say that good leaders. That's what they have around them.
Yeah.
The right people who understand. You have not just the economist or this or that, but you have a set of people whom you can turn to who are the experts in that field. And from that decision making, in other words, the decision making, engaging the people that you have around you, and then you now make the ultimate decision. But it doesn't seem, and that has nothing to do with any party, or it is throughout the years that I have seen that government have not understood that, even within the public service.
Yeah, because I don't think there's any serious problem of a national nature that doesn't need a multidisciplinary approach to. And it's one of our problems in terms of or challenges or shortcomings as a country and the way we address issues and problems in the country. We are very much event focused. We see something and we jump at it, and we don't have a systematic approach to solving problems, which would require looking at the thing, like I said, in a broader framework and bringing the different players so you understand more fully the challenge before you, so you could have the best possible solution.
But Mr. Jamari, it looks to me to an extent that even governments in St. Lucia over the years don't seem to have what I would say a short-term plan, a medium-term plan, and a strategic plan looking ahead. Because if governments were thinking that way, we would have been in a better position even in your part of business.
You asked, I could describe what I'm seeing.
Yes, indeed.
I cannot explain why it's like that. I have possible viewpoints on that. I think sometimes people are badly motivated. Like I said, my big thing is people are very short-term in their approach to solving problems. But if you genuinely care about the advancement of your country and its people, I cannot see how it can escape you that when you're making major policy decisions, that you do not get a broader view.
So we should be, in essence, more nationalistic.
Yeah, and more inclusive in the way we do. And it's not some people think it's an indication of weakness when you call for assistance. It's not.
It is
it's the wise thing to do, because the solutions to problems do not reside in any person's head.
No, we don't know it all.
It's too complex.
It's too complex.
For one man to have the answer to the problem. And the smartest thing to do is engage people. And any sort of leadership that doesn't understand that is doomed to disaster.
To failure.
Yeah.
Mr. Jamari, it is so interesting. Time is running out on us. It's sad, so to speak, when you're enjoying this, and at least one is educating oneself, listening. How do you think, in the final analysis, that we should go now?
Regarding the issue about the extra player? Well, I do know that the petroleum dealers have written to the Minister of Economic Affairs and the Minister of Commerce. And I hope they have the good sense to realize that they should not go ahead with this without the consultation of the dealers. Otherwise, it will founder.
And if that happens, what happens to St. Lucia?
Well, it's not, I mean...
Or what happens
it's not,
to
I mean,
you know...
And, you know, I know this, I know what is dangerous about that. And I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to explain this. Because it's a very specious argument that's going to be used, which will escape, I think, a lot of people. By saying if you bring in more suppliers, it will be better for the consumers. That is so simplistic.
Right, right.
But like I said, it's specious. Because until you go underneath what is being said and examine it in its totality, you realize that this may have a short-term gain, but it will be long-term pain.
So it's the pain that, you know, you have the happiness, but the pain comes afterwards.
Well,
is that it?
Yeah, and the pain will be of a longer duration than the point of happiness.
That's the happiness.
And that is going to be the seduction.
Exactly.
That it's going to, boy, it might work out nice in the beginning. It does not.
It's like the thing that we say is, to an extent, prevention is better than cure. But I must thank you very much. And once again, I must thank the viewers for, you know, who listen. And I hope that we have learned something from what we've heard tonight, because it is so important. Things are happening, and we see it happening, but we don't understand why it's happening. And consequently, I think this is what I would hope that this program is all about, is educating each and every one of us to what is going on, engaging people, bringing people so that people too can make that little decision in their minds and not, you know, just hear things, because a lot of the time is hearsay. We want the facts. The facts are more important than anything else, and governments themselves should always have the facts. Look for the facts, research, do the things that are necessary. And when they have done that, then we have a better country, especially as we're called the Helen of the West, you know, the pristine land we call St. Lucia. I want to thank you very much, wherever you are, for listening. I want to thank Mr. Jamari, you know, and I would say he knows quite a bit about those things. And we should really listen to what he's saying right now. And I hope the government does too.